Stephen Wayne Anderson was born on the 8th of July 1953. His life did not start off well. He was the eldest of two sons, born to parents who didn't much care for having children. His father was an abusive alcoholic who often beat both boys and their mother. And his mother was also quite abusive towards both of her sons after being abused by her husband. After years of living in this vicious circle, finally Anderson's mother kicked him out of their family home at the young age of 14 for him to fend for himself, but keeping his brother. Anderson started a life of crime. He burgled houses to keep food in his stomach and clothes on his back. But this was only the start of a life of crime, which eventually takes a sinister turn to murder. By the age of 18, Anderson had finally been sent to prison and was in and out of the institute many times, all for similar crimes. While inside, he proved to be a formidable character and caused lots of trouble for the guards and inmates. He was a violent man with a short temper. On the 24th of November 1979, Anderson was serving time for one count of aggravated burglary, which he was charged for in 1971, and 3 further counts of the same crime, which occurred in 1973. While serving time in prison, Anderson assaulted an inmate and a correctional officer, all in a brawl which demonstrated Anderson's violent temper. But on this day, in all of the commotion, somehow Anderson escaped from the prison he was serving time in and was on the run. An extensive search was formed, but to no avail, and Anderson was a free but hunted man. News feeds got wind of this and covered his story, while informing the public of the admission he had made while in prison. He had told stories of his life as a contract killer, who had committed at least 6 killings, all in Las Vegas, Nevada. While he was on the run, Anderson knew he needed a form of protection from being caught by authorities and sent back to prison. So he linked up with a well-known drug trafficking gang, and Anderson reverted straight back to type and committed at least one other contract killing, this time in Utah, where he was hiding out. On May the 26th, 1980, Anderson entered an 81-year-old woman's house by the name of Elizabeth Lyman, with the intent on robbing her. But what was to happen next shocked the small neighbourhood to their core. Before entering the house, he cut the phone line to stop any attempt at the person inside calling the police. When finally inside the elderly woman's house, he found her asleep in her bed. Dazed as she woke, she screamed aloud, which shocked Anderson. Then he shot her in the face with his handgun, the gun he liked to use for his usual contract killings, which was his means of earning money. She was dead instantly. Casually covering her with a blanket and picking up the bullet casing, he went on with the job in hand. He spent time destroying her home, trying to find any cash or valuables that she may have, all the while not knowing that a suspicious neighbour had called the police on him after hearing the commotion in the retired piano teacher's home. Anderson then went to the kitchen and made himself a meal and sat down to watch television while he ate. While he was sitting, armed police surrounded Elizabeth's house. They looked in the windows to see Anderson casually lounging in the front room eating his meal, when they burst in and arrested him for burglary. Then soon after the discovery of Elizabeth's dead body, a further charge of first-degree murder was added to his charge sheet. Anderson had just over $100 on him, the proceeds of the burglary. When questioned, Anderson did not try to deny what he did. He fully understood the fact that he was admitting murder. He continued to admit to the arresting officers, and 2 days later, when he was interviewed, the prison psychiatrist was sent to evaluate Anderson, and Dr. Flanagan reported that he was sane and sober at the time of the offence and was also competent to stand trial. The jury in the San Bernardino County convicted Anderson of first-degree murder of Elizabeth Lyman. But due to the fact that he had ransacked her home to burgle it, special circumstances were also put on the charge, and the jury stated that they believe Anderson should be sentenced to death. The judge agreed, but this conviction was short-lived due to the fact that some of the Californian laws were not adhered to in the trial. It is law that the court must determine whether the act of killing was the original intention or not before you can advocate the death penalty. So a second trial was set, and the second jury came out with the same conclusion. Anderson was a heinous man who had full intentions to murder Elizabeth and should be sentenced to death. Appeals were made on Anderson's behalf to overturn both convictions. His defence team tried all the tricks in the book. They used the fact that Anderson was not interviewed by the police in the correct amount of time, and the fact the original trial was nullified. They stated that the jury were tampered with and advised of previous misdemeanours which could sway their position. All of these attempts failed, and the death sentence remained. Anderson was transferred from his state prison to the notorious San Quentin prison and put on death row. While he was there, Anderson remained getting into trouble and was charged with a further 3 counts of assault on a range of inmates and officers. Anderson's defence team attempted to say that he had redeemed himself on death row and had become a respected and published poet. This was true. His poetry was published, and he was named the Bard of Death Row. But the team acting for the state were all informed about the amount of trouble Anderson had got into while on death row, and the amount of fights he had also had in San Quentin. After years of appeals had finally run out, the time had come for Anderson to face the lethal injection. He had visits from family scheduled for the 24th to the 28th of January 2002. Then, on the 28th of January, the time had come. His last meal request was ordered, which consisted of grilled cheese sandwiches and peach pie with chocolate ice cream. He was taken down to the room, which was void of any family from both his side and the family of his victim, and at 12:30 a.m. on the 29th of January 2002, with no last final words, Stephen Wayne Anderson was pronounced dead. The question is, should convicts on death row be given a request for a last meal and the chance to say final words? Thank you so much for your continued support. Feel free to leave a comment, as we enjoy reading them. If you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories from Crime Busters.